Welcome to episode 16 of the State Line Fast Break podcast. This is a special mock draft edition. In this episode, we are going to go over a little bit of our first edition of our big boards, plus do a lottery mock draft alternate pick. Josh is going to start out with the first overall pick and pick for the odd numbered draft pick teams. I will do the even. So, with the first pick, Josh is on the board using the Dallas Mavericks.
This should be the easiest pick we make here today, and I'm under the impression that they are going to hold on to this pick, Dallas is, and take my guy. I've already planted the flag months ago. I'm on the bandwagon. Kasey Boone is not allowed on the bandwagon, so go ahead and put that out there now. Um, I am going to root for this guy. There's no doubt about it. Um, he's the prodigy kid, the high school number one to NBA number one. I don't want to beat a dead horse here because if you want to hear the complete thoughts on how this shapes up for the team and the NBA as a whole, go listen to episode 14 as we did right after the lottery. But I'll say this at least. I think Dallas, if healthy, even without Cooper Flag, had a legitimate shot at the Western Conference. And now you're going to add, they're going to at least hope their next, superstar franchise player. And he's definitely got the ability. I think he's the safest pick. Um, he's not a Victor Wembanyama type talent, but he can do essentially everything on the court. He's 6'9". He's super young. He's 18 or 19 years old. I believe he 18, and then he'll be 19 during. I think his birthday's in like late December. If I want to.
Yeah, he's 19 right now. Will be 20.
Right now, doesn't have a birthday till late December. Um, he reportedly grew over an inch while at Duke, still growing. He is a tremendous defender, can guard multiple positions. More of the help side, weak defender who they have a tremendous one in that, and Anthony Davis already. He can shoot the three, he can shoot the mid range, he can get to the rim, he can get to the free throw line, he can rebound the ball, he can pass the ball. This is the safest pick in this draft. I'm unsure of his ceiling. I really don't know. I do think he's a potential, or I think he's going to make some All Star teams in his career. And I hope he becomes a superstar. Although I think some people may have some concerns whether or not really what his ceiling is as far as that goes. But I think the sky's the limit for Cooper Flag, and he's getting into a situation where, yes, he now their fan base is going to look at him and say, "Look, we lost Luka Doncic. You are now our guy, and we need you to be the face of this team." But that's going to happen, but it's not going to happen at least in year one or year two because of the team that's already built around him. So I think that could be beneficial in some ways, but man, maybe he doesn't have the weight of a LeBron James or a Victor Wembanyama to sort of get the team back to prominence, but it's right beneath that. I mean, he's going to have a very heavy load on his shoulders to eventually be the person to carry this Dallas Mavericks organization. And I'm here for it. And like I said, I'm on the bandwagon. And Cooper Flag will go number one to the Dallas Mavericks.
I agree with most of what you say there. Cooper Flag, the surefire number one pick, the best prospect in this class, the cleanest prospect in this class. I will echo that sentiment. I have been a lot more pessimistic about what he can be in the league than what you have been. I will not deny the fact that this kid is incredibly talented. He is one of the more well-balanced prospects. I mean, he's got measured in at the combine 6'7", and 7 quarters or and 3 quarters at the with no shoes on, so about 6'9". He's 210 pounds. Got a big standing reach at 7 foot. The max vertical leap almost 36 inches. Like he shot well and all of the metrics. The off the dribble, 21 out of 30, 3-point star, 15 out of 25, and we saw him develop into a pretty good shooter at Duke. He's going to do a little bit of everything in the league. I, we get into a bad habit, and we are just as vulnerable into falling in this as everybody else. But we get into this. Every player coming out's generational. We want to peg the next guy as generational. The reality of it is, it's generational, and is they're once in a lifetime players. They've got it's the term generational for a reason. Victor Wembanyama was obviously one of those players. In recent memory, LeBron has probably been a guy we viewed like that. Shaquille O'Neal. These guys are generational, but Cooper Flag is just the step underneath that. He's in that class that I would put with Zion Williamson, where they are, and Anthony Davis, where they are incredibly great prospects coming out. They're going to be really talented NBA players. But I don't think that they're a generational prospect to the point where you're penciling them in as top five, top 10 within a year of being in the league, like we saw with Wemby and LeBron and Shaq and some of these other guys that have reached that in the past. But there's no doubt his off-ball defense, his instincts off the ball defensively are special. I mean, his leaping ability to recover in those situations. It'll be interesting to see because obviously Anthony Davis has said he wants to play with the traditional big. And so this leaves kind of the door open where Cooper Flag's going to be playing the three, where some people might view him more as a four. So who like is he going to have to guard out perimeter wings? He's obviously a good defender, but I don't know if he's a great on-ball defender. I view him more as like just a really special off-the-ball team defender. But he's obviously got the capabilities to play defense. Um, I don't think he's going to be a 30 point per game scorer in the NBA, but consistently a 20 point per game guy is very much in the books. I mean, he's going to do a little bit of all. It's the surefire #1 pick. I hate that it's going to Dallas, but their fans deserve it. We mentioned it that the organization does not, but surefire, that's the right pick. And #2, we gave myself the even number pick so I can pick for the Spurs this time. We'll probably do another one of these later down the road where we'll let Josh pick for the Spurs and see how I react to it. But picking for the Spurs here at #2, I think this is a no-brainer. You take the best player available. You're not in a position right now where you can say, "Oh, well, this guy doesn't fit properly." No, you take best player available. For me, that's Dylan Harper. Surefire, like I, there's a separation of tiers for me in this draft. I think you've got a separation. #1, it's Cooper Flag. #2, it's Dylan Harper, and then after that, there's another class of separation. Whereas we'll get throughout the draft, I'll kind of explain who I have in that. But there's probably about 5 guys, 4 or 5 guys I would have in that next class. To me, Dylan Harper stands out as just he separates himself from everybody else that's in this draft for that #2 pick. And there's going to be heavily questioned upon can he fit next year in Fox and Stephon Castle? I undoubtedly say yes. I think you take the best player and figure it out. There's a lot of questions about the shooting, the spacing in that. I'm not going to sit here and argue Stephon Castle as this great perimeter guy. We saw him improve his shooting as the year went on with more opportunity. But he is not pegged as a shooter. He is your classic defender. He's going to attack hard at the rim. De'Aaron Fox, before this year, what we don't talk about enough with De'Aaron Fox is he suffered a fractured finger in training camp 2 days into practice with the Kings this year, was playing with a fractured finger on his shooting hand for all of this year, which caused some shooting numbers to drop. He was a 37, almost 38% three-point shooter the year before. I think he's going to be just fine being able to space the floor. And you've got Wembanyama, who's one of the all-time spacers of the floor at the big position. He's 7'5" and he's shooting logo threes consistently. And then when you start getting into Dylan Harper, like De'Aaron Fox, a very smooth looking left-handed jump shot, shot 33% on 150 attempts this year at Rutgers. That doesn't scream a bad shooter to me. There's moments of inconsistency. There's moments of streakiness where he's going to miss a string of them in a row. But we saw many times. I mean, the just fly like, and there's a lot of questions about his athleticism in this draft in terms of the vertical. Some of the shot like he tested better than VJ Edgecombe at everything except for the max vertical. Edgecombe had a 38.5 max vertical, and Dylan Harper had a 36.5 max vertical. And for Edgecombe, who's being pegged as this elite athlete, for Harper to test better in just about everything, besides that max vertical jump, he is a fantastic athlete. He is a just a bucket getter. He can get to the. That's the thing about what excites me is you've got three just straight downhill attack the rim guys, and Harper, Fox, and Castle. You've got the ultimate pick and pop guy and Victor Wembanyama. Dylan Harper he measured in about 6'4.5" at the combine. He's going to be roughly 6'6" in shoes, maybe a little bit less. He had a 70% plus finishing rate at the rim as a point guard. That is unheard of. Just special bag that can get him to the rim at any time. I do not have as many questions about the shooting as what some do. He's going to have to develop. He's going to have to get better. Um, 33% is not great by any means, but on 5 attempts a game as a 18-year-old who's now 19, I think that's fine. Like he's going to have the ability to improve that physically. Jonathan Givony for ESPN, who does Draft Express, they platform that's used by many NBA and college evaluators, had him physically compared to a Dwayne Wade in terms of body structure. And then we've got a lot of comparisons of his game compared to guys like Brunson in terms of the way he can separate, get downhill. Mid-range shot is pretty clean looking, very smooth looking jump shot. Um, and then Cade Cunningham's another one he's getting compared to a bigger guard, playmaker, get to the rim, got to develop the shot. So I see Dylan Harper as a no doubt um, second overall prospect, and he's got a 6'11" wingspan as a point guard. That gives me very good keys that he's not going to be a tremendous defender probably at any point. He's not going to be Stephon Castle level defender, but he can be like De'Aaron Fox, where he's got this long wingspan. He's going to be able to affect shorter point guards in terms of jump shots and getting to the rim. And I think he's going to be pesky in terms of getting steals, being able to dig at big guys. So I've rambled on here trying to talk everybody into it, but Dylan Harper, to me, it's a no-brainer. You take him as the number 2 overall pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna fight you on a lot of these points. If I were you, if y'all aren't gonna go in the direction of grabbing a Giannis, I think you take Harper based on how the NBA has played today, based on the other guys on the board here. He just seems like too good of a guy to pass up on. I do find it a little just unique. I mean, just because in a way, like the Fox trade makes it a little more weird just because you got a bunch of guards at that point, but we've seen teams be successful with a bunch of guards. I still think, and I think you would agree that you're going to have to add some sort of shooter, some sort of, catch and shoot guy, and then even maybe another, um, a center at some point. I mean, there's still holes in that roster, but man, you got to just, you definitely feel better, and you can just tell by your tone of voice that you're going to be much more optimistic heading into the year, even knowing Dylan Harper is probably going to have some up and downs. But when you look at premier scores in the NBA, a lot of these guys in college, maybe not, there's not many guys in college who go out and average 25, 30 points a game, and they go to the NBA and do it. But you look for guys who, give you the 15 to 20 on average, but have games where they go get you 35 or more. And Dylan Harper has shown that. And like I said, I mean, I'm not sure how it's going to work. I got to see it first personally, but I would definitely do that if I were the Spurs GM and take Dylan Harper and figure it out because of his offensive upside. I mean, he's got some James Harden in him. He's got some. some Brunson in him. He can get to the rim, finish with that left hand. It's going to be fun, and I think being around Wemby, anyone can sort of figure it out over time. But we should move on to Philadelphia 76ers, and I'm going to go under the impression that they're going to take this pick. And this is really where the draft's going to start for a lot of people. And man, I've really been back and forth, but I think another guard's going to go here, and I think they're going to. If I was them, I would take Edgecombe because I'm under the impression that they're going to try and run it back with what they have, and say that they had the injuries last year. So I think they take Edgecombe here because, and then they try and add some sort of big in the free agent market or the trade market. So I think they take Edgecombe. You could throw out, they're missing some perimeter defenders, especially in the Eastern Conference. I mean, you're going to need these guys. Look at who are the top teams in the Eastern Conference. You're going to need guys to go out and defend. I mean, Edgecombe can. He's obviously you talked about his athletic. Everyone talks about his athletic ability. He's a freak. He's going to make just crazy plays at all times, and you're going to have Maxi. We're talking about teams for your Spurs with a bunch of guards. Well, the Sixers have a chance to run this here with Maxi, McCain, and Edgecombe, but they're all very different kind of players. And now you're going to have one that's sort of defensive minded, and I think over time, he'll have to improve his consistency on the offensive end, which I think he will. I think that Nick Nurse has had success with guys like this. There's just so much talent there. I mean, if you go turn on any Baylor game, he's going to make one play. I mean, just one play that comes to mind was it's either this round of 64 or 32. He goes up and he didn't even finish the dunk, but the ball just caroms 30 feet in the air because of how explosive and strong he is when he's getting to the rim. And he's this database here has got him listed at 6'5", and that means you're going to have Maxi at 6'2", McCain at 6'2", and then you'll have Edgecombe at 6'5", and then Paul George. And I'm not saying all these guys are going to start, but this is a potential lineup you can throw out there with the impression that they're going to run it back. So I think they take Edgecombe here. Obviously, a lot of people probably have Ace Bailey going here. Man, that'd be a lot. To me, that's just a lot. If they're trying to go all in here with Embiid, that's a lot of guys who are not great shot takers with Maxi, George, and then if you threw Ace Bailey in there. So I'm under the impression we're going to try and go all in and go get this wing defender, athletic guy, and VJ Edgecombe.
Yeah, I that would be my pick as well. He fits what the Philadelphia 76ers need. They need some defense out on the perimeter because right now Maxi and McCain, they are not providing that for you. I think Edgecombe has the traits to be a very solid defender. Um, what I like about Edgecombe is he did measure in a little thicker. He's put on some weight since his college season. At the combine, he measured in at about 133. I'd still like to see him get up a little bit more. Obviously, you don't want him to put on too much weight to where it takes away some of his athletic ability. But 6'4", no shoes, and about 195 or so at the combine. I think that gives you a little bit hope because there was definitely some murmur about him coming in at smaller than what he was listed at in college. But for Philadelphia, I look, it's for me, it would be either I'm looking at Edgecombe or I'm looking at Conchinipple if I'm Philadelphia. Those to me are the two seamless fits for their roster. Edgecombe, I think, gives you the slight more defensive upside because you've got plenty of scores on that roster in terms of Maxi McCain, Embiid, and Paul George when they're both healthy. Kelly Oubre, I think, is very similar physically to what Ace Bailey provides you in terms of size and some of their skill set is similar. I'm a little lower on Ace Bailey than what a lot of people are, but to me, I think Philadelphia make the right pick there. Like I said, for their team specifically, Edgecombe would be best player available, and I think he's a seamless fit right next to Maxey, and I would start Edgecombe over Jared McCain. Let McCain be that microwave six man that comes in and provides you scoring. So I am with you in that pick. As far as the Charlotte Hornets now, this is a very interesting spot to be in because it's another team where people are going to really put the bat signals on. This is Ace Bailey team, but I mean, is I don't know that he's going to provide you something that you don't already have, and to me, he's not the best player on the board. Brandon Miller and Miles Bridges are going to provide you what Ace Bailey is going to provide you offensively. I don't know that I see the upside that some people do with Ace defensively. He's definitely, and he measured in it. He's closer to 6'7", 6'8" at the combine than what he was at 6'10". So that's a little misleading. He doesn't have maybe the size that was reported at Rutgers. That would definitely concern me. But for the Hornets, the fit that I like, and it's what I think they should do. It's a little clunky in the backcourt, but I'm taking Trey Johnson for the Charlotte Hornets. You're pairing him up with LaMelo Ball. That's going to create you just an ultimate offensive backcourt. Uh, the defense is the defense is going to be heavily questioned with that roster if that's the case. Um, just because we know what LaMelo is defensively, and Trey did not show very much at all Texas this year on the defensive end. But the like his shot making ability, and we saw what he put up at the combine uh this year. I mean, just a shot maker. One of the best shooters of the combine, 22 out of 30 on the off dribble, 16 out of 25 on the star three-point shooting. He has the ability to get like out of every player at the top of this class. He might be the guy that I think has the highest scoring potential in terms of what they can put up on average. I think Ace has a high potential in terms of that if he can put it all together. Um, Dylan Harper, I think, is a guy that can put up 20 to 25. Cooper's a guy I think can put up 20 to 25. For me, Khan, who I have third on my big board, is going to be more in that 15 to 20, maybe a little bit more range. But Trey Johnson, I think, has legit scoring upside in the league. He would excite me if I'm a Hornets fan, but it does leave a ton of question marks in your backcourt. Another guy, if they decide to move on from Mark Williams again, you could potentially look at Queen or Malawatch for them. Two guys who are very talented, but have plenty of concerns. I think just the highest upside player here for them on the board would be Trey Johnson.
Yeah, and they don't have a great history of drafting the rookie they took last year, Salon. Not there's not much really to say about what they did, and they're not going to be very good next year, regardless of who they take. So, I think taking Trey Johnson will definitely bring in some more people to go watch some Charlotte games. From that perspective, I mean, I'm not criticizing your pick. There's just no telling what they would take. I do have Trey Johnson fourth on my board, um, even over Ace Bailey, just because, man, I'm just a guy who likes a mid range jump shot, and he's definitely got the best mid range jump shot in this class. There's no doubt in that. Um, Obviously, yeah, not a great defender, but um, I was wanting him to hopefully fall to one of my later picks here. But so credit to you for having him ranked pretty high, as I'm with you on that. So we're moving on to the Utah Jazz, and this team's got plenty of needs, in my opinion, and it's another team that's sort of can up in the air just because I don't know who they're going to try and hold on to, and who they want to try and get rid of. But based on if they're going to sort of keep it how they are, I think that this is where Ace Bailey's going to go, because really they're missing that three. John Collins um, I believe he can become a free agent this season or this summer. So you could take Ace Bailey and put in a lineup with Sexton, George. Well, I mean they got some guys here, but they have Kessler and Markkinen, and then they could throw Bailey in at the three, depending on some lineups that they're going to go there. I think that Ace Bailey, I'm with you that he's a risky pick to me, just because he's not. I mean, he can get. We've seen him really go get hot and get some big scoring games as he and Harper were teammates at Rutgers, and some injuries for Harper where Bailey had to be that premier guy, scoring guy, and he showed he can do that. But I don't know. I think he has tremendous potential offensively, and I think the Utah Jazz would be happy with him sliding here to 5. And you like Will Hardy? He got an extension to be their head coach here recently. So I don't know. I could see them going a number of ways because if they want to move on from Kessler or Markkinen, I could see them taking Molly Watch here. But I'm going to just go under the impression, given how their roster sits now, and I believe they'll take Ace Bailey here.
This is the best case scenario if you're a Utah Jazz fan. You want Edgecombe, you want Bailey, you want one of these guys to kind of fall out because I think they give you. Um, I mean, Edgecombe seems like he's going to be a little bit more safer than probably what Trey Johnson or Ace Bailey is going to provide you, but you need hope, and there's a reason why they were trying to tank to get the first overall pick. They need somebody that can be the future face of this organization who has that upside. Ace Bailey, I would say, certainly has the upside to be one of the best players in this draft class. I have plenty of concerns about him. I don't like the media run that he was on at the combine this week, saying bad shots for me or what you might perceive as a bad shot for some people or as a good shot for me because I practice those shots. I don't necessarily like that. I don't necessarily like the fact that he said he doesn't have a weakness. He's a all-around player. I would love a guy that's confident, but just the way that he kind of came off and some of those things kind of rubs me the wrong way about the kid. From everything that I've watched, listened to, read, nobody, and everything I've seen from Rutgers, nobody believes this is a bad character kid or that he doesn't have a good workout or work ethic. Very much has a very positive reputation from his time at Rutgers. I don't know that there's necessarily those concerns, but this is the type of prospect where it's like the Michael Porter Jr. type of thing, where he has the ability to just be this unbelievable shot maker. But Barry has that Trey Johnson symptom where he's going to take some really bad shots. Um, it's he's such a polarizing prospect. I have a hard time really buying into him. I still have him sixth on my board. It's not like I'm knocking this guy down to 15 or something. He's incredibly talented. He's got very high offensive upside. There's some defensive concerns there. Just question some of the physicality maybe that he has. I think he might shy away from contact at times. But look, if you're the Utah Jazz, you need a sense of hope. You need somebody that has a extremely high ceiling. And I think this would be the dream scenario of them because there's a lot of people that have Ace Bailey as the number 3 overall prospect. Obviously, him and Dylan Harper have been these, and Cooper Flagg really, I mean, Cooper Flagg was reclassified, so he hasn't been talked about in this class specifically for a long time. But for the past 2 or 3 years, you've really been heard about this 2025 class. You got these two kids that are going to end up at Rutgers. They are all time, these are great talents. And so if you're the Jazz to get Ace Bailey at 5, I think you're extremely happy with how that works out. Now, in terms of what the Washington Wizards need, this this team is very confusing to me. They make the Kyle Kuzma trade, which I think was great for them to get rid of him. But you got Chris Middleton still under contract at a high number. I really like what you did last year in the draft, getting Alex Sarr. I think he was a very fun prospect. I like Bub Carrington. Keyshawn George, I think has some upside. You got AJ Johnson in that trade alongside Chris Middleton. I know the Bucks were really high on him when they drafted him originally. Kispert, who this is such an interesting pick. There's kind of two guys that I'm looking at here. Um, it's either Con Knipple or Derek Queen for me. Um, thing about it is Con Knipple's very similar to Kispert, but for me, he's my third ranked prospect. So if you're the Wizards again, you just need somebody you view as the best prospect in your opinion. But Derek Queen, I think, would give in the world that we're seeing in the NBA today, where the two bigs are playing together, and Alex Sarr is, I think, a very positive defensive front court big. I don't think you get a lot of defensive upside out of Derek Queen. He's very much an offensive centric player. He reminds me of a lot of like a baby Sabonis, baby Şengün. Like he's got a lot of creativity to him. He's a great passer for a big guy. Plays the game at a slower pace. He's methodical. He likes to get to his spots. He doesn't play super fast. He's not going to beat you off the dribble or beat you down the court. But I really like him as a prospect, and I think I'm talking myself into, and Knipple keeps is going to fall for me, even though I have him at third. But I really like the prospect of adding Queen in the front court next to Alex Sarr. I'm a big Derek Queen fan. He, I think he has a lot of DeMarcus Cousins in him. Back like he's got very high offensive scoring upside. Is a little bit slower. Going to be primarily shooting mid-range jumpers starting out, but I think he has the upside as a smooth jump shot. I think he can shoot threes at some point in the NBA. Um, I think he would be a very solid addition to that front court. Obviously, he's played at Maryland, so DC's not too far from where he played college. Him and Alex Sarr, I think, would be a great front court tandem moving forward.
Yeah, that. I mean, I could see that happening. I'm really not sure on how teams are really going to view Derek Queen. He's got an interesting skill set. And Alex Sarr is not your traditional center by any means. He really is a perimeter player at times. He can do a number of things. I'm a fan of Alex Sarr's game. I would be curious to see if they would look at grabbing a traditional center there with Malu Watch. I I consider that if I was going to have that pick. I'm not sure on the direction of their team they would want to go if they want to add one with those. But either way, we could see two bigs going there or a big to pair up with their second overall pick from last year, Alex Sarr. That moves us on to the New Orleans Pelicans, a team that has a number of question marks heading into next season, mainly uh, surrounding around Zion Williamson. But I can go through a number of guys here that they're going to have to make decisions on, whether that's Bruce Brown or um, they're going to have Hawkins coming up. They're going to have, and then you got DeJounte Murray, who they traded for, who's going to be coming off of an injury. So I think that they could go a number of ways here. And I think that they're going to, man, I really leaned towards. I'm a fan of Casper's out of Illinois, although if you're going to tell me that Knippel is still available here, I don't see how New Orleans would pass on Con Knippel to another Duke guy to put here in this lineup. He's just too good of a shooter. He's too good. He's too crafty of a player. He's got. I mean, we'll see how he is defensive. He's a gritty defender. He's just a gritty basketball player who, like I said, he knows how to play. He can fit right in, and he's gonna. I think he can easily be a 40% 3-point shooter. Anything less 30, 38 to 41%. That's where I see him, and I think I didn't expect him to be available here, to be honest with you. So I think if you're the Pelicans and you can grab a Con Knipple here, I just don't. They're another team where I'm just really thrown off on what they're going to do with their roster. With we've had a number of conversations with Zion, um, McCollum, sort of very much so on the back end of his career, but I don't know if they're wanting to move off of him, who would take him, sort of those things, and then we'll see how Dejounte Murray gets back. The Dejounte Murray thing is what holds me back from them taking Casper's here. So I think you take Concanipple and you just throw him into the lineup and you trust his basketball instincts, his shooting ability, his knack to get to the free throw line, and his just overall immediate impact. I think he can make more of an immediate impact than a lot of these guys. So I could see, and then they took Messi last year, who wasn't too bad for them in his this season. So I don't see Milo Watch going here. Um, I will take the New Orleans Pelicans to select Con Knipple.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with Knipple specifically, obviously. I've got him number 3 on my big board. I think it's the right pick here. Um, it's a pick that you don't really expect for him to be there in that moment. For me, and if I'm the Pelicans, I'm also looking at a guy like Jeremiah Fears. I think there's a lot of uncertainty on that backcourt. Murray's coming off 2 significant injuries in his career. McCollum, I don't know how much longer he's going to be here. Those 2 guys could be on the move very soon. The best point guard on the board for me is Fears. So that's where I would kind of look if I was the Pelicans. I would also look at, like you mentioned, Malawatch. I don't know if Misi's good enough to prevent you from getting Malawatch, who I think has legit all defensive team upside. Offensive game's obviously still a work in progress, but he's only been playing basketball for just a few years now. So we'll see kind of how he develops. But Knipple's the best player on the board there. I think that's the right pick for the Pelicans. Don't think you can really go wrong with Knipple. Like you mentioned, I think he has the upside and the ability to play right away and make an impact, which some of these guys I think you might hold the reins back a little bit and try to develop them a little bit more. But I think Knipple is a guy that can play right away. For the Pelicans, we'll see what direction they go. They got to get healthy. That'll really determine what they're going to be doing moving forward. But Knipple's a good fit on that roster. Um, Now, in terms of what the Brooklyn Nets are going to do, I think it would have been a perfect scenario if they could have Con Knipple falling because I think he would be a great fit there. But this is another Jeremiah Fears team, in my opinion. I think point guard is the biggest need for this team. They need a guy that can really settle things down and control the offense. And you might think Jeremiah Fears, does he really have that upside of controlling an offense? Um, I think that he's going to be one of the younger players in the draft. He averaged 17 a game. He's a very talented young scorer. We saw the ability to score the basketball. In terms of playmaking, I don't know if necessarily it's the best fit. I follow so many people on Twitter. I've stumbled this week upon some Brooklyn Nets fans because of Dylan Harper's father, Ron Harper, the 5-time NBA champion's been very active on social media this week, and he's responded to a couple of Brooklyn Nets fans that are trying to get them to trade up for the number 2 pick. But I've seen a lot of Brooklyn fans really be interested in Nolan Traore because I mean, to me, and I very much agree. I think he's one of the best playmaking players in general in this draft class. And we might get to Traore here later in the draft, but the improvement that he's made overseas playing in France, the last 20 games of his season up there has been very, very impressive. This was a guy 2 years ago that was touted as a top 5 pick in this class, showed some struggles playing overseas a little bit, was cut out of the rotation a little bit last year, but the last 20 games, I think you're going to see a lot more buzz coming back to Traore because of just the stature that he has, the ability to play make as a point guard. So that's somebody I think the Nets might be interested in. I'm still going to be very high. You mentioned Kasparis for the last pick. I'm a little bit further down on Kasparis than maybe some. I've got him and Traore right now interchangeable. Um, I think I have Kaspar's listed 15 and Traore at 16 right now, but I think that very much could flip by the time the draft rolls around. But I think I'm going to stick with Jeremiah Fears. I think he gives you the highest upside. Again, you're a team in Brooklyn who you just need upside swings right now. You need the guy that has the highest ceiling, the best talent. For me, that's Jeremiah Fears. I think he should slide in and start at point guard right away from you. For you, we'll see what they do with Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton. Watch would be a guy if they move on from Nick Claxton because Claxton's going to have a big market. Same with Cam Johnson. I would heavily consider Watch if you decide to move on from Nick Claxton, but I'm going to stick with Fears going number 8 to Brooklyn.
Yeah, Fears is a very entertaining player to watch. I mean, he can make some incredible hand. He's got a very strong handle. He can use both hands around the rim. A very flashy player who, I mean, yeah, he's got lots of talents, and he's just a guy who jumps off your screen when you're watching Oklahoma last year, who didn't have necessarily a ton of talent, but he really just screams out, modern day NBA. Like he could fit right in my opinion. So we'll see if that what happens with that. And this moves us on to the Toronto Raptors, who I've often called the Toronto Craptors because know, they won the championship in 19, but other than that, necessarily haven't had a ton of success. They traded for Brandon Ingram, which I thought was a very interesting trade. But I mean, I think that they're going to take Watch here, just because, just based on how their rosters sort of fit out with the with the centers they have. They have your guy in Jakob Podol, and but I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't try and bring this guy in, and you're not on a very tough timeline here, as he's, Malwatch, like you mentioned just a second ago, hasn't really been playing basketball very long. He'll probably take a couple years to develop. I mean, why not take him here if you're the Raptors? There's too much defensive upside, and it just seems like the smart, safe pick. I mean, he may not ever be, an all-star player, nothing like that, but he can bring stability to a position that the Raptors haven't really had since Valanciunas left. Um, so I think you just try and bring some pretty strong stability, and based on the players that have went, um, this guy seems like the best fit and best available here to me.
Yeah, this is becoming a very popular pick by many. Watch going in being the selection for the Raptors. I think there were some questions maybe about his visa and how that was going to kind of work itself out. But um, very high on Watch. More recently, I was kind of down on him throughout the season. I kind of questioned. He has some of the Gobert syndrome where he was kind of played off the court a little bit in the tournament. But you just watch this, just such a big physical frame. The wingspan's elite. The shot blocking. Um, for somebody that hasn't played basketball a ton, I think he has a very high ceiling if he can put it all together. Just imposing. His ability to score around the rim, I think's impressive. He's almost got a 10-foot standing reach. I think it measured in at like 9.6 at the combine. His true shooting percent, obviously he's a big that's super big, so his true shooting's gonna be a little higher, but it's 74%. He shot 71% in college. Max vertical of 30 at his size. There's just a lot to like around Malawatch, and if he can continue to develop his offensive game, just if he can get some Hakeem Olajuwon type skills, get some dream shake, get some post moves that you have the ability to go to in the NBA, I think he could be a very fun center to watch. I think he's got a lot of upside. I'm very excited about what the future of Malawatch could be, and I think the Raptors are a good destination for him. In terms of the Houston Rockets now at number 10, I think there's so many different ways that they could go with this pick, and whether they keep this pick or not will be very interesting to see. There's a couple of guys that I like here. Selfishly, I do not want them to take Carter Bryant because I am very, 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 very high on Carter Bryant and his ceiling. He was a bench role player at Arizona, but when he would come in just an like just he gets after you on the defensive end. Very smooth stroke from the 3-point line. Someone that is starting to get a ton of buzz in draft circles is really shooting up the board. Measured in at about 6'8", got a 7-foot wingspan, a vertical of 39 and a half is very impressive. Just, I think he's going to be your prototypical 3 and D guy. He's got a very high upside. I think he's going to be able to shoot the ball off the dribble a little bit more. He didn't show a ton of creation at Arizona, really wasn't given the opportunity to do so as he was playing more of an off-ball role, playing off the bench at Arizona. But there's a lot to like with what Carter Bryant provides you. I think he is the perfect pick here if you're Houston, and I think it really hurts my soul that I am doing this. But they need shooting, they need scoring. I think Carter Bryant could be a very good shooter on that roster. And it just seems like him and Colin Murray Boyles. Colin Murray Boyles is a great defender. We don't know really what his shot's going to be in the NBA yet. Has struggled, but he has Colin Murray Boyles has legit creation ability, like Draymond Green like to be that four, but also be a primary ball handler, set up others. You're not sure about what his shooting upside is going to be, but a tremendous defender. I think that is another guy that Houston Rockets may look at, but I think they're going to target the guy that provides them a little bit more shooting. And to me, that is Carter Bryant out of Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, based on all the things that you said, the vertical, that's an unbelievable number. And it seems like they probably won't have this pick. So we'll see with that. But based on what you said, I didn't know a ton about him, I'll be honest. But based on what you said, he seems like a guy who could come in and fit right into what Ime Udoka wants to do there in Houston. So, and if you're wanting him to go to the Spurs, I need to hope that that's not going to happen. So that would be worst
Yeah,
case scenario for you.
I think Carter Bryant's a guy that's going to sneak up potentially top 10. I think he's going to go higher than what people expect him to go.
Um, as far as the Portland Trailblazers, this team here had a better season than expected last year. I mean, they obviously weren't a good team, but they had some real flashing points with a guy who you like a lot, and Denny Advia, who ended the season greatly. And, he's a bigger, I would consider him almost a guard just based on the assist numbers he's capable of. And I'm going to keep saying him over and over, although don't think they're going to take him based on what Advia did down the stretch. But Kasparis, I could see going around this area, but they took Donovan Clingan last year, who I wanted my Grizzlies to take. They are going to have Aiton. So they're probably good at center. I considered maybe Ace and Newell there, but um, I don't really know what direction they want to go because they have Scoot Henderson they took him second overall in the Wemby year, who he's done some decent things for them, and so they don't want to sort of stunt the growth there probably. And then as far as shooting guard goes, I mean they would seem to be a team that would love for Nipple to fall to them. That seems like that would be probably best case scenario. And if I'm sitting here at this pick based on how I think they view the guys on their team, which, like I said, could be wrong, but I do think that they really like what they got from Denny last year. I think that they're going to continue to build around Scoot and the bigs that they have. This probably you're gonna call this a reach, and it rightfully could be. But I love Liam McNeely here because um they can go grab a shooter. I mean, him and he's the closest thing to Con Knipple in this draft probably, and he's young. He's very young. He plays the game pretty similar to Con. Like I mentioned, he should develop into a very good 3-point shooter. He's got very good size. He can kind of defend some different positions. He's not necessarily just gifted athletically, um, but based on what they have, I mean, I could see if they're really wanting to utilize Denny's playmaking abilities, why not go get a shooter? And I mean, I'm not going to look at the college percentages here. I just think based on his 3-point shot, he's got that set three. I think he's the best shooter left here. And I think if I were a Trailblazers fan, I would be ecstatic if I could land Lim McNeely here at pick. What are we at? Pick 11.
I'm I'm right there with you in the Liam McNeely. I have him rated much higher than where you're going to see him. A majority of the big boards, he's 11 for me, and so I'm a big fan of what he provides you. Like you said, and that I've seen a lot of stuff that says he is the best shooter that at the same time can't shoot because at UConn he was very, very inconsistent, very streaky, shot much lower than what people thought he was going to shoot, but you saw him light it up at the combine. Just a very smooth looking jump shot. And he even said himself, like he didn't shoot and perform to the best of his ability at UConn. I mean, he was one of the highest rated prospects coming out. There was a lot of the big name colleges were trying to get him. Obviously, Dan Hurley lands him at UConn. Had a lot of trust in him to start him, and that whole UConn team really kind of struggled together. And so I don't know how much of it was on Liam, how much of it was on the environment. I'm still very, very excited about what his upside can be. Um, you said it's unpopular. It's not unpopular for me, but it will be unpopular for a lot of people. But I like the pick. I think he definitely deserves to go around that range. Now, in terms of what the Chicago Bulls need, they need a little bit of everything. Um, they need scoring. They need versatile defenders. They need big guys. I don't mind the point guard situation there, whether you believe it's Lonzo or you think Giddey's the long-term point guard. They've got Kobe White. So to me, the most pressing need isn't point guard, so I wouldn't take a Kasparis or a Traore. Um, it's a very, it's a tough spot. A lot of people are throwing around Asa Newell. Sorber is getting a lot of buzz here recently. Thomas Sorber, the big from Georgetown, who got hurt towards the end of the year, hasn't really gotten to do a whole lot of workouts in terms of draft preparation because he's still recovering from his injury. That's a guy that I think is a sneaky, sneaky pick. That this is a team that I think is sneaky in terms of going out and getting a big guy. I don't think Vucevic is going to be there much longer. He was in heavy trade discussions last year. I truly believe if Golden State was to strike out on Jimmy, that Vucevic would have been the guy that would have ended up in Golden State. Um, Another guy that I'm really high on that I'll talk about more when I get to the Spurs is Maxime Branow, the Stanford Cardinal, the big guy who played alongside Wemby and when they were before they ended up going to the league and college respectively. Kalkbrenner is a center that I'm extremely high on. Same with Danny Wolf. Um, these are guys that I think Chicago might reach to get. But Colin Murray Boyles, I think, is somebody that could be in play here. And based on what they need, I think this is the place where I'm going to take Thomas Sorber. Um, Very versatile big man. can score the ball, very effective, big physical guy. I mean, he's around 6'10", 250. So he's a big, thicker body. He's a guy that's also been rising up boards. I've got him at 17. There's several people that have him higher. I've seen it in mocks as high as 9, 10, 11 range. Um, doesn't give you much perimeter, but very, very good defender as a big guy. I think this would be a very good fit in Chicago, and I don't think Bulls fans will be very happy about this pick. I would imagine they're going to want something a little bit flashier, but you've got Buzelis, you've got some different wings that I'm a little bit intrigued by there, so that's why I'm not going a Colin Murray Boyles. I'm going more of a traditional center, which I think is something that they're going to look for, a defensive big.
Um, yeah, I don't know what direction. Once again, a lot of these moves are dependent on what direction these teams want to go in, which is unclear for a lot of these teams. And Chicago is one of those teams as they have a bunch of questions surrounding their roster, whether if it's Giddy, whether if it's Vucevic. I mean, you're right; he was on the verge of getting traded multiple times, and he's a good regular season guy at times, but I wouldn't. If I were a Bulls fan, I wouldn't be upset with moving on from him. And you're probably right; they probably wouldn't be just thrilled with taking a big there, but um, I'm really not sure what direction they're going to go in, so I'm not going to critique that pick too much. And this is where we get into a very interesting position. And this pick really was difficult for me because I've just been under the impression that I don't know how, I don't know what. I feel like Trey Young's going to try and potentially force his way out of town, whether if it's this summer or deadline next year, whatever it is. I could just see him wanting to move out, and as much as he's done for that team, as much as he's done for that franchise, I could see them saying, you know what, that's okay. We're willing to move on, and I think they could get a decent package for him. And this is where I'll take a guy who I have ranked seventh on my big board, which is probably higher than a lot of people. Is Kasparis out of Illinois, and I just think they're going to send some sort of writing on the wall here as Kasparis is a bigger guard. Sort of how the NBA is going is a lot of teams are going after these bigger guards. A guy who's played over in Europe and then came over here to Illinois, and he can do a bunch of things. He's a bad shot taker. There's no doubting that. He can really pass the ball. He can really rebound the ball. He can really score the ball. I mean, I'm not saying he's Luka Doncic by any means, but he sort of has a similar play style in a lot of ways as far as high usage rate, step back threes, really good passer, really good rebounder, with not a great necessarily percentage, which they're they're already used to that with the Trey Young, except he brings you a little bit more defensive upside, but just simply off his size, I don't think Kasparis is going to be a great defender. But I'm just too much of a fan of how some of these bigger European guards come into the league and play, and I've wanted or like I said, I got Casper ranked very high on my big board, and this is more of a writing on the wall for the future with the Trey Young scenario situation. But I think Caspers has the potential to be the guy who comes in and sort of fills that role. Although, I mean, he's got some bust potential too as well. I mean, every one of these guys, other than maybe Flag and Harper, have legitimate bust potential. We have to mention that. But if I'm here, you're sitting at Atlanta. I mean, you got a lot of players on your team to be capable of making a run in the Eastern Conference, and you get in the 13th pick, I think you go out and take best available. And for me, that's going to be Casper's.
Yeah, I can definitely see the argument in terms of Casper's being high. I've got him probably a lot lower than what most people are going to have him at 15 on mine. But like you said, for Atlanta, they do have some really solid wings. The with I mean Johnson, and now you've got Reese Shea in there. They probably do need a little bit more backcourt help, and the Trae Young question mark is always going to be there as long as Atlanta's not competing. Um, we'll see what they do with the big guys, and Yeka Kongwu had a productive year at times. We'll see what they do with Clint Capella, but I like the fit there. Somebody that would have interested me there would have been Colin Murray Boyles too. If you add a defender, they got a lot of scoring. I think if you can continue to add versatile players. So I think that, yeah, like you said, that's a very interesting spot. I'd be very curious to see what they do with that pick. And I think we have a chance at a lot of draft picks being moved in this draft, and we say that every year. And it's obviously dependent on how the board falls, because if somebody falls that maybe teams don't expect, or um, players don't go where they're projected, and that could affect if teams want to move up and down. But we say this every year, but this draft really does feel like, and this offseason specifically feels like there could be seismic movement. So we'll see kind of what happens there with Atlanta. We'll move into the last pick of this exercise that we're doing with the lottery, and it once again belongs to the San Antonio Spurs. Um, there's a lot of different ways that I think that we could go with this pick. Now, we took Dylan Harper to add that to the guard rotation, which kind of throws me away from taking Cedric Coward, which is I'm super high on him. Only played 6 games at Washington State this year before getting hurt, but he is a special, special talent that I think is going to have a very high um, ceiling in the NBA. That's somebody that I'm going to have a, a very high interest in if I'm San Antonio, would be Cedric Coward. The ability to shoot, he's just a flat out scorer, and I think that's what the Spurs need. But it adds another guard to your mix of Keldon Johnson, Vassell, De'Aaron Fox. You add Harper, and you got Castle. So that kind of throws me off from taking him. Colin Murray Boyles is fascinating to me. This is a team that, again, if you take Harper, you've got Fox and Castle. That's a lot of scoring from your guard positions. You don't have a lot of shooting, and Colin Murray Boyles certainly does not help you out with shooting. But he would add a playmaker that doesn't need the ball. That's could be the best defender in this entire draft class. So that's something that if he's still on the board, I think that would have to be a heavy consideration. Asa Newell might be my favorite pick here for the Spurs. I'm definitely considering big guy here. Um, if Sorber didn't already go, I think this would be the perfect spot for him. I like Maxime Reynaud, who, once again, I mentioned, is a Stanford Cardinal, but he played with Victor Wembanyama before Victor came over to the draft. He's from France, and so they've got that connection. He's a 7'1". He can shoot, big presence down low. This would probably be reaching, but he's starting to gain a little bit of steam as a prospect. I think he could sneak up higher than what people think. Rasheer Fleming would be a solid pick here as well. He's going to provide you the shooting upside from the wing. He's 3-and-D guy. He's kind of a little bit older, less upside Carter Bryant, in my opinion. He's a little bit, maybe a little taller. Um, such a fascinating spot. Oh, shoot. This is tough. I'm not really high on Jace. I don't think he fits here. I'm just going to take Cedric Coward because I think he's going to have a very productive NBA career. And we're going to look back and be like, why didn't this guy go higher? He's going to be a true scorer, big time shot maker. He's got a high ceiling from a 3-point. And that's exactly what the Spurs need. He doesn't need to be on ball. I struggle a little bit to see some of the defense just in the 6 games. I mean, they're a little bit lesser talent that he was playing in this year specifically. but I really like what Cedric Coward can provide you. This is going to be higher than what you're probably going to see him in a lot of places. He's starting to gain some steam in this range. Um, I think you're going to see a lot of people start to rate him more in the 20-ish range, but 40% three-point shooter. The Spurs need shooting. If Sorba didn't already go, I think a big guy to pair along with Harper would probably be the ideal draft setup here, but next best thing you need is shooting, and I think Coward is the best shooter on the board. But that's just several guys that I like in the situation. Noel would really intrigue me, but I think you need more of a traditional center. I don't know if he's more of a. Sorber would be perfect because I think you could throw him out there alongside Wimby. Noel, I think it wouldn't be maybe as clean of a fit if you're going to play them together, but there's so many different options what the Spurs can do with that pick if they decide to keep it.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I just trust what they're going to do as far as an organization. But I mentioned earlier that the team needs are either another big or a shooter, and he averaged fit or shot 55% from the field, and I think into the 40s from the 3 point line. So based on team needs, seems like a guy you could just throw in based on his age. He's played a lot of basketball, so I mean, overall, a lot of guys here, and I know we've talked a lot here, but I just want to briefly mention two guys who aren't going to go in the lottery, but who I'm who I like. And I'll start with a guy who I've talked about a lot on this podcast back when the NCAA tournament was going on, and Walter Clayton Jr. And I don't know what he will end up being, but if you're some team late first round, early second round, especially a team that's already kind of a somewhat contender, I don't see why you don't just take a risk on going to getting Walter Clayton Jr. I mean, he's played a lot of basketball. He's coming off a national championship. His clutch numbers are unbelievable. Um, his 3 point shot. I mean, obviously he's not a great defender. He can be a turnover guy at times, but his scoring waves are maybe better than anyone in this entire draft at times. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say he finds a way to figure it out in the NBA. And some team takes a flyer on him, and hopefully he gets into a situation where it's best for him. So he'll be definitely a talked about prospect. There's no doubt, and people are going to be higher on him. And I don't think you're quite as anywhere near as high on him as I am. But and I understand just based on some of his size and whatnot. But and then another guy, another guard from the SEC who's caught a lot of media attention based on like his lottery or his combine scrimmage performances, but just what I saw from him last year for Auburn and Tahad Pettiford, um, a lefty guy who, I mean, he only played 1 year at Auburn. He was one of the only guys on Auburn who was one of those highly rated kids coming out, and he just delivered for Auburn all year long. He's got the 3 point shot. He can be a pesty defender. He's another guy where I just say he's too talented. He finds a way to figure it out regardless of what team he's on. And he just played on a team that was basically an NBA team as far as age. So I think he can sort of fit in anywhere. So, we've talked a lot about players here, and I don't necessarily know where these two guys and Walter Clayton Jr. and Todd Pettiford will go, but they're two guys that I'm sort of putting a star next to their name saying these are two guys who I wanted to see do successful and I think have the real shot to do it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be lower on those guys than what you are. I think Walter Clayton has very impressive scoring waves, like you mentioned. He reminds me a lot of the Noel kid from Kansas State a few years ago, where he just had that magical tournament run, and a team's going to talk themselves into him in the draft. And I think Clayton is a better player. I think he has higher upside. Very similar to Pettiford. I have legit size concerns about each of those players. Clayton, I don't think he provides you anything on defense. I think he is a specialty player. Like I don't think he's going to be like almost Peyton Pritchard-y, where he's going to just come in off the bench and just provide scoring. I think Pritchard's a much better defender, but just in terms of that impact on offense, where he can be just a microwave 3-point guy, I think that's what we're going to be looking at with Walter Clayton. Pettiford, I juggled throwing in, but I, I lean towards Phylon, the point guard out of Alabama. I like his upside. And then Will Riley, who I slotted in at 28. Erratic shot taker, erratic shot maker. He's a very interesting watch. You just wonder what he's doing with some of the shots he takes. But a few guys that just keep your eyes on, like we didn't talk about them a ton today, but these French guys, I'm very high on Nolan Traore. Like I mentioned already, he was projected top five at one point in this draft. I think he's going to be, I think he has a chance to be a pretty legit NBA player. I think he's got like almost Josh Giddey like upside. That's kind of where I slot Traore in terms of what I envision he can be. And then two other guys, Noah Essengay. Some people are a lot higher. I have a little bit lower, but he's got ridiculous vertical. His wingspan and length at his size is pretty impressive. I think he's going to be a two-way player. And then Noah Pinda, another guy out of France, who is starting to really rise up boards. That those are three guys, and we've seen a lot of French prospects. And we saw Sarr and Wimby go top three in the draft the last few years. So you're starting to see French flavor. You mentioned Saloon. Um, so the French keep producing NBA talent year after year. I think there's a chance that we have four or five of these guys go in the first round or at least get drafted pretty high in this draft. And the NBA is setting up, well, not NBA, but world basketball is setting up for an extremely exciting 2028 Olympics when it comes to Los Angeles because that French team is going to be ready to go. And if the NBA doesn't put out a talented USA roster, they're going to, but they got to put one together that fits, that meshes well because all these French guys have played together. Didn't even mention Reynaud, who's from French. Um, that's going to be a very scary roster to play against, and we saw it in the Olympic gold medal game this year. French getting a silver medal. Wemby gave them everything that they wanted and more, and it just came down to Steph Curry and LeBron James making Hall of Fame type plays, which those guys have done throughout their career. But they're not going to be there in 2028. And how is the United States going to respond to a France team that's going to be ready to go? But in terms of, unless you got any more comments on the draft prospects in this year's class or international basketball, I think that will pretty much wrap up this edition.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really fun experience. I haven't done anything like this. Probably went a little longer than I had expected, but there's just a lot of guys, a lot of you've done a lot of homework on this, and um, we're grateful to be able to hear your information regarding these guys. And I'm just hoping to see if I can get any of these right. That's what I'm sort of going to be hoping to look for here. But I mean, overall, good experience and grateful to do it. And like I said, I'm on the Cooper Flag bandwagon. Go ahead and write that down now.
Yeah, this is something that I study in depth pretty consistently throughout the year, but especially when the Spurs get out of the playoffs, I really or not playoffs, they didn't make the playoffs, but when their season ends, I dive into this pretty deep. And so, especially the last few weeks, this is something that's has been my main focus, even with all the playoff games going on. But that's going to do it for this episode of the State Line Fast Break podcast. You can find us on every podcast platform and all the socials, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, or Instagram. We would love your feedback and love to hear where you've got players ranked. And as always, thank you for tuning in and see you all next time.